Thank you very much indeed. Well, it's great to be here today. And just a very brief introduction. The basics series started a while ago, actually, when I did clarinet basics, and the concept really is based on, as Claire was very kind to talk about, my sort of simultaneous learning approach to music teaching, music education in general, which is a very logical and sequential way of doing the whole job. And the more logical and sequential we are at teaching and getting our pupils to learn, the more success there is in learning, and they get the next thing and they feel motivated to go on to the next thing. So it's lots of little things served up in the right order, we hope, in order to really make progress feel very strongly as they're doing so. And that's what it's all about, really. And as the last few years have passed, we've been putting the idea into different instruments. And of course, it was absolutely brilliant to team up with Jess, brilliant violin teacher and violinist. And we've had such fun putting these books together. We've had some extra input for things like the double bass book, so they've all had lots of specialist people looking at them. So that's a bit of an introduction. So I'm going to move on to the next slide, and Jess is going to talk a little bit to you now about how it all kind of works.
Great. Well, hello. Lovely that you come to join us. It's just fantastic. I think Paul and I are really thrilled to share this series because we started on it, as he said, quite a long time ago, and it evolved quite slowly, and we had a lot of input from other teachers. For me, the idea really came obviously from which he had started a while before I was involved, but I, as a teacher of little ones, and I teach advanced as well, but beginners, I was always using one book for a few things and then another book and another book. And I thought, this is quite expensive. I can't ask the children to buy these books, the parents to buy these books. So it was a lot of effort. And then I was always worried I was going to miss areas, as well. So eventually, we got together, and I feel this book's got everything that I feel I'm quite a committed teacher, really need on a day-to-day basis with my beginners. So it's got some Galamian ideas in there, the core technical skills that obviously Galamian, one of the greatest teachers ever, instigated really obviously at a basic level. It's got some Suzuki ideas in there, and I come from a family of Suzuki teachers, although I'm not a Suzuki teacher myself. But they, all the ideas about playing from memory and being very free in the movements, some Kadai about the singing and understanding about the rhythms, and of course all that comes through with Paul's simultaneous method, which we'll show you in a minute as well. And then Dalcroze and rhythmics, all about the movement and actually being relaxed when they play, so they can make a beautiful sound and it doesn't need to sound scratchy, as I'm always telling the new parents in my school. So here's the first page. And we're going to whisk through the whole book. And then, as Claire said, we'll take questions for the last 20 minutes. We've already had some submitted, which is brilliant. So there's a table of contents, and you can see that we've got the violin basics, the viola, the cello, and the double bass. The cello and the double bass, we had a lot of input from professional colleagues who are teachers as well. So that's been amazing. The violin book has a separate piano accompaniment. Piano or violin accompaniment. It's called the Teacher's Book. And pretty much all the pieces there are new. There's a few familiar tunes in there as well, but they're all nearly written specifically for this book. The others, the viola, cello, and double bass, if you go on to there's a QR code at the front of the books, but if you go on to the Faber website, and Claire, I was going to ask you to put a link on that for at some point in the chat. If you go on the Faber website, you can actually download all the sheet music for the accompaniments, and you can download the audio as well. And we've got an example, one of the videos we're going to play use an example of a student playing with the audio backing track as well. So that's really helpful. Paul, should we move on to the next slide?
Yeah, indeed. So just on that very first page, it kind of gives you the ingredients that are introduced in each stage, and we have hopefully have done that in this very logical and sequential way. And very much kind of behind it, these are something that I kind of introduced with the simultaneous learning idea, that what I call the 4 Ps, which really are the 4 basic areas of learning that underpin everything. But, and I always say to teachers and students, if you're doing something of each of these in your first lesson, second lesson, right up to your very last lesson, should you ever have it, then you are covering all the basics. Posture meaning everything to do with technique and posture, pulse, rhythm. Phonology, as we say here, is just a fancy word for the sound. So, we're concerned about the sound from the word go. And personality, not your personality or the pupils, but the personality of the music. So are we always putting character, from that very first piece? So the 4 Ps are there kind of behind the concept as we go through. Should we go on to the next one?
Yeah.
And here we have page 1.
Great. And you can see there that obviously we've got the way it's laid out, and that's the same across all the stages. You've got some fact files, some rhythm boxes, and we ask them in the rhythm boxes to clap the rhythm. Oh, thank you. Clap the rhythm. And then so that they really understand it, and with the counting as well. And then we start with the open strings, because obviously on a string instrument, bowing is the key thing with the rhythm to get them going. Great.
So we move on, and this is page 10, although page 10 is quite early on in the book because of the early introductions. And again, we did our best to create a lot of really fun pieces, both duets and with piano. On the actual sheet, you can see there, when you've got the 2 little figures after the title, that means it's a duet, and the couple of piano keys, it's a piano accompaniment, and it's about half and half. So teacher hopefully gets a lot of fun playing all these duets. And we've got one here, and I think this is Blast Off. So we're having a little performance here. But maybe I'd just put another point here, is that we try to make a lot of the titles quite amusing, because if there's laughter and smiling in lessons, people learn better. If we release those feel-good endorphins, serotonin and dopamine, those feel-good endorphins, we just learn better. If you're stressed at all, you don't learn better. So there's lots of room for having a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that, I'm head of strings at my school, but if I'm walking down the corridor, if I can hear laughing going on in one of the teaching rooms, I know I don't even need to look in, because that's going to be a really positive lesson, So it is one of those key things, isn't it? And I think the titles and just the accompaniments and everything, it just keeps it all flowing really quickly. We, at each stage, we introduce the new ideas very, very meticulously in order of what we think they should be, and then really after the first few pieces, the students often go home and they just finish that stage on their own, because there's nothing more complicated in the rest of the stage. They've learned everything from that first page in each stage, so the students can whiz through the books very quickly if they've got some support at home, really. And I love those titles. I've run out of rosin, those ones. And it's got like superhero challenges as we go along. Again, just bringing in some Delcros there. They all do slightly different things, but that one going from playing position to rest position, to just making sure that the posture is excellent the whole time when they're getting ready, if there's a cello or a bass, so that they're always very comfortable, and we're repeating things, kind of smuggling in all that repetition, which we know as teachers they need. Should we move on to the next one, Paul?
Yeah, absolutely. Here we go. Double bass.
Great.
Go on.
So as Paul said, we had a lot of input for the cello and the double basses. I play the violin and the viola, the violin professionally, but the viola to a reasonable level as well. I certainly perform on it sometimes. And then we've got activity boxes at the end of each stage, just to make sure, they've really understood all the learning that's happened in that stage. And I love these ones where they make up their own pieces. And this one obviously is in open strings, but my students just love that. They give it a title, they put their name on it, then they perform it to their parents or or to their teddy bears or whatever it is. And that's been a huge hit. And of course, gets them used to writing, even at that young age, gets them used to writing and understanding where the notes are, because it all helps their development.
And I think we're going to have a performance of March of the Open Strings, which is coming up now. Here we are. So they don't all have rapturous applause like that. I had about 500 people in my front room then, as you can hear. The accompaniments are all fairly straightforward for people who don't really play the piano. They are there on the backing tracks as well, but I hope that they are going to be useful. And if a violin teacher or double bass teacher doesn't have that much piano technique, they might be able to get around those, which are rather fun to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then in this page, so we're on to stage 2 already. So this is, we're talking about the bow here. And we've taken this from the violin one. So obviously the cello and the double bass ones are slightly different in terms of bow hold. And we've given some, obvious ideas there about the bowing. And then with the rhythms, we've always said clap the rhythm first and then pluck the rhythm, and then they're going to bow the rhythm. So by the time they actually get to bow, the rhythm will be very instilled in them. It'll be sort of physically, they'll have done that several times. So they'll really feel that pulse in their system. And then we've got some games, which, as teachers of young students, I'm sure we all do, about, holding their wrist here and turning, just so they can check, is their thumb in the right place? Is their are their fingers in the right place? I have my bow. I don't know why I was doing it without it. Just to check that the angles are all good. And they can do windscreen wipers like that, obviously. And then bouncing fingers as well, just so they can lift up each finger. And obviously lots of students find that very difficult because they might be very young, their fine motor skills aren't really developed yet. But it all helps just to get that independence of the fingers, so that when they're bowing, they're not going to just be stiff and locked. So we're trying to instill all those ideas right from the start, because I certainly believe it doesn't need to sound terrible at the beginning, like a lot of parents fear. And if we can get their bowing okay and the violin angle okay, then they can bow reasonably parallel to the bridge, and it can sound lovely from day one. So it's a physics relationship, isn't it? And once they and the parents understand that, then we're on to our winner, I think. And then we've got lots of pieces to reinforce just the open strings, and we've got them reading straight away from the beginning as well. I know obviously in the Suzuki method, sometimes they don't start with reading, depending on the age they start. But I know Shinichi, who stayed in my house when I was very young, could I say, he told my cousins, the Lane sisters, how he didn't use music at the beginning because after the war, they didn't have any music. And that was the bottom line. He said, why would you not teach them to read music right from the beginning? So interesting idea about that. So we do introduce music at the beginning for lots of reasons, but we do also ask them to memorize the pieces, some of the pieces, as we go along in little challenges.
We're going to have a performance. Yeah, we have a performance of Scary from that very stage. Yes. Here it is. Oh, why did it do that? Oh, sorry, it's going on now. I don't know why I did that.
We definitely got the character of it.
Okay, it shouldn't have done that, but there we are. It's okay.
And you can see, particularly that lad. I remember when he started. He's now much more developed, but when he started, he did everything with incredible character, because that is his personality. And Scary, he really understood that this needed to be very slow bows and quite heavy, and really got into the mood of it, which of course really engages their imagination and their creativity side, and all those important things that we need, as well as obviously the technique and the other things. Great. And then I think we've got some follow my lead and hoedown and an activity box. Paul, do you want to say something about the activity boxes there?
Oh yeah. Sorry, let me just go back to that. I mean, this was an idea right from the beginning, where how do you get someone to practice? We won't go into that in a lot of detail today, but you get someone to practice because they've enjoyed the lesson and they want to go home and they want to do more. I mean, I want to explore. My two favorite words talking to pupils about practice are experiment and explore, because they sound fun. Not just, it's practice is not a tedious, boring thing. And so we've got lots of activities for them to do. In their practice. I mean, you can do them in lessons as well, of course, or you can certainly go through them in lessons, but all sorts of technical ones, creative ones. As Jess was saying, here's another make up your own piece, and they always have a particular idea, maybe something to do with the character of pieces we've just been playing, but activities are important, and to be able to send pupils home to have some fun with activities on their own is obviously going to be great.
Yeah, yeah. And in that one there, we've got, without your violin or bow, just kind of basically bending your knees up and down and making sure that, comfortable physically. And then we've got stirring the witch's cauldron, which I think all of us teachers do quite a lot in both directions. And I also teach a sort of massed string thing in my school. And we use a lot of these in the groups as well, 35 kids at a time. We use them in the groups as well, because they're great warm-ups and the kids love them. And then I know that they're physically relaxed before I ask them to get their violin on their shoulder or the cello, in the spike holder. So we're good to go at that point. I suppose it's worth mentioning as well, Paul, that the books we talked a lot, Paul, at the beginning, didn't we, about whether we were going to make all the books work together, make all the pieces work together. And in the end, after I had really a substantial amount of conversation about it, and also with Faber, we decided there'd be too many compromises for what is essentially a teaching method. There'd be too many compromises if we tried to make them all work together. So some of the pieces are compatible with each other, but it's not designed in that way. It's not designed in that way. Is that?
That's exactly right. What Jess said is exactly right. We spent a lot of time debating that issue. I think there is a series out there. I can't quite remember which one it is, where I think most of the books for different instruments do try to have the next same piece, but then you do have to make compromises. And if you try then to introduce clarinets, for example, as well, which one of the series has done so, they're very, very difficult, because you have to find strange keys in which to put these instruments in and do all sorts of contorted things. So it didn't actually work, and so we decided to dedicate each book to the instrument, but there are lots of overlaps should you be teaching two pupils around about the same time with the same books. But I think they are basically dedicated. They are individual.
Yeah.
So we can't stage say we're not going through every stage, by the way. It feels a bit like we're going to do every stage, but we're going to do lots of jumping in a few moments. But there's some quite fun things to begin with that we thought we'd like to play you. Anything you have to say, particularly because we have a performance coming up?
Yeah, I mean, I love this the fact file here, because right from the beginning they're learning what a down bow is, and we don't just say it goes down to the ground, because of course if they're playing on a lower string or if they're playing a cello or bass, it doesn't go down to the ground. So we try and give much more realistic explanations of all of those things, and they're learning about dynamics and things. So, and then we put everything in the next stage. So all those mezzo fortes and fortes, an arco, and we've littered the next few pieces with those things just to reinforce them. So by the time they get to the end, I suppose by the time they get halfway through the book, they're roughly at initial grade standard, and by the time they get to the end of the book, they're a really secure grade 1 standard. In fact, I had one student last Christmas who'd got to the end of the book, and then she did grade 2 in her Christmas exam. She did grade 2 and got a distinction. So, they're very solid. They're very, very solid at that point. And should we have a listen to this piece? I love this one.
Yeah, I think this is Procession of the Violin Teachers is coming up. Oh no, we see the rhythm box bit. So there. Oh, it was we had that coming up just to reinforce that idea about plucking these rhythms
Yeah. So when they have the rhythm, obviously they clap it first and then they pluck it, and they can choose which string. Oh, it even says each on a different string, so they can do that. And again, you're getting them to practice what it's going to feel like at home, where they have to make all these decisions themselves rather than saying just do it on the D string. They're having to choose everything on their own here, with clear guidelines. And then about the rhythms, and then bowing it as well. Yeah.
And here is the performance.
Yeah.
That, of course, that was a piece of cake.
Yeah, yeah. But so nicely played by him,
Uh,
for he'd only had a couple of lessons, and he'd got to that point. It was really nice, really nice.
and another point that comes out of that, because he's obviously not a child, and so adults use and enjoy this series just as much as children do. It is written for any age.
Absolutely.
So we move on. This is, I put this there because some of the activity boxes at the end of stages have some really fun things to do. So here we have a word search, and people like word searches these days, understandably so, because they're fun. And so it's nice. And of course, you can then ask, do you actually know the meaning of all these words, as well as searching for them, because they're all useful words to actually have some understanding of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's another way of smuggling in reinforcement, isn't it? And checking they've really understood things as well. And again, a bit more composition, but a bit more complicated with crotchets and minims there. And remember to give it a title. And they love that. They love that. And again, it's building that sense of character with the music, so it's not just about playing the dots.
And another point on this page here I just noticed is personal bests. Most youngsters, well, not most, an awful lot of youngsters play computer games part of their life, and they have their personal bests. In this game, my personal best is 27 million. So we thought, let's give them some personal bests. So, for example, here, write down the number of repetitions with a good bow hold of whatever it is they were doing. And it's really up for you and them to decide, well, what can you have a personal best on? Maybe, how slowly can you move your bow, keeping it absolutely still, no wobbles. Or whatever. There's all sorts of different kind of personal bests for different instruments, different people, and just worth working on that and working out what this particular people will enjoy doing.
Yeah, yeah.
Moving on, we go to a bit of viola.
Great. So we've got harmonics here, and we do this in all the instruments. So it's a Kadai thing. I mean, lots of us do it anyway, but Kadai was a particular advocate for this. And of course, doing harmonics, we do the octave harmonics, so exactly halfway between the bottom and the top of the string. We do octave harmonics, and then they bow. And one of the great things about this, of course, is that they don't press their finger because they're just playing it very lightly. I grab my bow for a second. So that's D, and then the octave harmonic. So they put their finger down very lightly and play it. So it takes away the tension, particularly of the left thumb, which is often, the criminal in bad tuning. It's often the thumb rather than the fingers that's causing the tension there. And the other thing is that because they're used to doing that, and I'm slightly leaning because of my screen, but if they're used to doing that, then going back to first position, whether it's on a violin, viola, or a cello or double bass, they get that feeling of shifting and moving around the instrument. And what it does is it removes that fear of shifting later on. Now, in up to grade 1, there isn't any shifting, of course, but by the time they get to grade 4 and 5, and they're really having to shift around quite a lot, they are just fearless because they've been used to doing harmonics and then going back, and harmonics are going back. So it's a very easy way to introduce something that later on is going to be vital for us as teachers to make our life much easier. And I've always been a big fan of it, so it was great to be able to put it in the book here. And you can see we're just talking about the posture. And we actually suggest at the beginning of the book the teachers put a dot, right, sticker underneath the finger, underneath the string, so the students know exactly where to go. And we do that a lot in my orchestra, just swinging their arms around, going to the harmonic, swinging around and going to like a first finger B note or something, and then back and then around to the harmonic, because then they get that sense that this shouldn't be rock solid, and they can just move around the fingerboard, and it's made my life much easier later on. It's fantastic. And then we've just got a few pieces on that. And then a few more, and some you can see in the activity box there. So relaxation technique there, and a good one to do before they do the performance. So, and I did this with my students as well, where they just, we start and they bow, they breathe out for 2 counts, and then up for 2 counts, in for 2 counts, and then they do it for 3, and then for 4 and 5. And we do this as a personal best, actually, quite a lot in school, because if they can get to 10, and then breathe in for 10. They're completely relaxed at that point. In fact, I did it on Tuesday with a viola student who was doing grade 5 viola and was quite anxious before we went in. And we just did that with him for a few seconds before he went in. And then he was fine. He was just fine, because, of course, it calmed his heart rate down. And then we have one of my favorite pieces, Paul, Steam Train.
And what we've done on this page is to kind of fill in a practice map. I don't know whether you come across my practice map, so you can download these from my website, which has got lots of bubbles, like my simultaneous learning musical map of the world, which has all the different areas that is being a musician. And here are some of them: scales, rhythm, improvisation. And what I'm doing here really is saying, here's Steam Train, and here are some different activities that we can connect to in order to bring out different elements, different ingredients, understand them, see how they connect. And this is very holistic, really, really sorted teaching and learning, because our pupils really understand what they're doing. They get it from all angles. So lots of little activities there, all connected with these different areas to do with Steam Train. And just a little bit of Steam Train. Have to say that this is actually a computerized version of this. We didn't get a live performance. So just give you an idea. There's 2 bars introduction. All that there is a practice map, just to give you a little closer view of it. But you can make these up, not necessarily written down. You just this is the way that we are thinking, I hope, as imaginative teachers. And there it is. So a sweet little piece, sweet piece. It sounds nice when it's played by real people, of course.
And then we're in stage 11, and of course we're changing the time signature here. We go into 3 beats in a bar, which on a string instrument, is different from a piano, because you got the emphasis on the down, up, down, and then on the up, down, up. So, and they get that pretty easily, actually, because we've done some clapping and everything beforehand, and they've understood it. And here we're introducing the 4th finger. So we've done the other fingers already, and we're doing a really, really nice thing where we. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry. We put all the fingers down, let's say on the E string, but we can put them anywhere. And then we ask them to tap their fingers. And we do this at various different stages in the book. But of course, if they can do that, then we know that when they go home, they're much less likely to do the dreaded thing here with collapsed wrist. So because they've understood, this is the posture. And I sometimes take photos and send it to their parents. Or if I'm not allowed to do that, if it's a school environment, we can't do that, then I just write in their notebook about which page they need to look at the left-hand picture at the beginning of the book, so they know what it looks like. But because we introduced all the fingers in quite quick succession, it's one stage at a time, one after another, and with the harmonic as well, then usually they don't do that thing where they just play the first finger like that. let's move my camera. They don't play the first finger like that, and then they second, and then they can just about get the third down, but it's straight, of course, and then they just can't get to the fourth at all. And then we have to try and re-educate, and that's when they do that. So it's solving problems for them and me down the line. But it's it's an old Galamian trick, but it works brilliantly. It works brilliantly. And then we've got it just playing for the tuning, just playing so the open string, fourth finger. So at home they can check that it's the right pitch. It's the right pitch. And we do lots of singing in lots of the games in there. There's loads of singing. So they really are developing that inner ear as we go along. Because of course on a string instrument they do, well, on any instrument, but particularly a string instrument, they need that. Thanks, Paul.
Good. We move on. And so again, in the activity boxes, sometimes we have crossword puzzles, which are fun to do. And yeah, just more games there. So we go on, and we got a performance here, I think, of Song of the Happy Frog.
Yeah.
Should we go into that?
Great.
That was one happy frog.
Yeah. Well, oh, and a bow as well. Excellent, excellent. Yeah, and that piece, as you can imagine, is littered with fourth fingers, and then she shifts up for the harmonics and shifts down again really nicely in tune. So obviously when they're focusing so much on the left hand, then the right hand can be maybe slightly less or slightly pressed, but she got the hang of that really well, really well. And then we carry on to the next stage where we were introducing some more fact file things, some more keeping the fingers down, and more personal bests here with the activity bow. And then we're reinforcing about the seesaw with the bow and the breathing bow, so they understand it, it has a life of its own, and because of course the left hand is nothing without the bow, and then making up some more pieces. And by this stage, sometimes they're making up really, really quite complicated pieces because they know loads of notes, loads of rhythms. So they're always very excited about that bit.
You can, that we don't give very much space here to write long pieces, and you can always download manuscript paper these days. It's very easy. Oh, there it just comes a bit bigger to have a quick look at, but we talked about that already. So we go on, and we've got a performance here of Song of the Wind, again from the double bass. And this is the one, isn't it, that was played with a backing track, I think.
Yes. Oh, I think so.
Yeah, and then it's only a small. It's not the whole thing. It's just a little excerpt from it because the quality wasn't brilliant. It wasn't because of the backing track. It was just the recording. But you'll get a little understanding of it.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's obviously when you're recording a backing track, it doesn't come out that well. So we just gave you an indication. But it's they always start with some time on a metronome kind of thing, and yeah, it's useful if you don't happen to be able to play the piano in these things.
Yeah, and it's also useful, of course, when students are practicing at home because they can just download the audio as well, And sometimes, a sibling or a parent might play, if it's not piano, they might play a different instrument that they can play one hand of that on their clarinet or whatever to help to accompany the student as well.
Exactly.
And now we're into slurs. Of course, slurs are a big thing once you get past initial grade, and they are needed for grade 1. And you can see we've introduced it really carefully there on the left. So we've given down and then down, up, and then gradually we add the slur with the rest, and then we just slur it entirely. We've tried, obviously, we've tested all these things with a lot of students before we wrote the book, and this works really well. I mean, it's fundamentally what we all do anyway, but it's nice to have it written out and reinforced. And Paul, this is one of your favorite.
Yeah, it's absolutely one of my favorite. But go on, Jess, you did talk about it.
So one of the things, of course, about just engaging the students and their imagination, this particular student loved Harry Potter, absolutely loved Harry Potter. So we invented a few words so he could hold his bow properly, and then just basically point as if he's doing spells, and it's really sweet. Should we have a listen?
Yeah.
Larissimo pegitis, Sticulus tremoso, Fragata dotilium.
Brilliant, brilliant. He just loved doing that. He loved doing. We did several takes of it, so by the end, it's trying to build obviously some strength in the outer section of his his little finger there, because obviously that's quite weak when you're little. So it's building some strength there. But it was really sweet, really lovely video.
Yeah. Then we go. Oh yes, we got a performance of one of the later double bass pieces, Things That Go Bump in the Night. So we go back to my astrolabe hiding behind the double bass.
I love the characterization of that player, and the tremolo at the end. He's just waiting for his moment to end it dramatically. It's fantastic.
And we got, well, given the time, actually, we got another performance there, but I think we might slip over this one because it's only just another performance of Pepperoni Plus. So Jonathan will come in next time. It's like, we can perhaps put it on our video somewhere. But here's one from Cello Basics. This is again, it's just a snippet of this little homage to JSP. There also may just mention, because we haven't yet, the cartoons in all the books, they haven't always been done by the same person. We've had a few different people, but they're just wonderful, and you don't tend to notice them really. But there's a lot of detail, and you know, the facial expression of older JSP here, who's clearly delighted. So here's just a snippet of this particular one. Little snippet, and yes, clearly old JS is happy with that.
Yeah, really.
So we come nearly to the end of the book.
Yeah, and this is the last piece in the book, actually, extra large brown jug, which has got a bit of everything. Got a bit of pizzicato, a bit of even left-hand pizzicato, and lots of different rhythms, and you know, very solid at this stage, I think, at the end of the book. Should we have a watch of him play?
We will, but as Jess said, it literally, we managed to squeeze every single thing that they might have learnt, all the ingredients, just into this one piece. And so here it is.
Oh, lovely. Love that. I mean, he made very, very quick progress, and he'd probably done the whole book, certainly within a year. And he was grade 8 by the time he was 11, like really solid, really a music scholarship, grade 8, at that age, which was amazing, fantastic. And I think that's the
So
last picture ball there.
you get your certificate, obviously, to be exploded. I mean, in terms of maybe photocopied and made bigger. And it's nice to get a little certificate at the end.
Yeah.
So, oh yes, we just had this, which was a nice. We had a nice. There's been quite a lot of nice reviews, but particularly nice one. I think we thought, yes.
Yeah, this is from Alex Lang, who does a lot of work, I mean, brilliant anyway, but with Nicola Benedetti's organisation. And this was in the Strad magazine, which was great to have a review there. And he said a lot of really nice things about the viola book, which was great, including that must have for every teacher of beginner viola, which was really nice, really nice.
There we are. So that's just a quick kind of journey through it. This is the code that Claire was talking about, string basics. I hope I got that right. 20. And if you go to the Faber store, and maybe Claire will put just the link into that, and you use that code, I think it's a massive 20% discount. I wouldn't like to say. I think Claire might tell us maybe a month or something like that.
She's just put it in 2 months. Yay.
Oh, 2 months. Well, there you go. So that's available for the time being. So, do tell your friends as well. So let me come away from that, and I can then join you. And if there's any more questions, there we are.
Thanks, Paul.
I can come back to that.
Yeah. Claire, I don't know whether you're able to pop, because I know we had some questions in advance, didn't we? Hello again.
Yes, hello. Thanks so much, both of you. And thanks everyone for your time today. And yes, I've just put a few links in the chat. So there's that chat link for buying the books, and there's a discount code there. There's also a link to where you can find those downloads that Jess was talking about, to download the accompaniments. So yeah, we'll move on to the Q&A. So yes, please do submit questions either in the chat or in the Q&A section. And in the meantime, yeah, we had a few submitted in advance, so we can kick off with those. So we had a question from Roxana, which was, how do you help pupils with technique in the early stages? Violin position, left hand shape, bow hold, technique. Obviously, one starts one step at a time, but what about a few weeks or months in when nothing seems to be quite in the right place?
Yeah, I know. It can be a real problem, can't it? I mean, if we're lucky enough to have students who are who've got some support at home, then we're in a great position. But if they don't, or they're incredibly busy doing loads of other things and they don't practice in between, I mean, ideally they would do, because they'll be so fired up and excited. But obviously it does sometimes happen that, sometimes they don't have an instrument at home. They're only allowed to use, the council instruments, or they can't take them home, or whatever it is. I suppose in our book, there are so many options that they can just move a little bit slower. And, the pace is not the important thing. It's the enjoyment as they go along and feeling they're achieving all the time. If they come and they're, usually it's classic problems, isn't it? That they're holding their hand like that. So my violin teacher did something that we're not allowed to do anymore. He used to just hold something very sharp, the end of a compass. So I didn't bring my wrist in anymore. So that solved that problem. But obviously we can't do that these days, thankfully. But sometimes you can buy some gadgets that go on the outside, or I have some furry toys at school that I sort of put here so they don't squish it, that kind of thing. So something to connect their imagination every time they then put their hand there, that they don't collapse it. Often it happens because they're not comfortable with their violin under their chin, or on the side of their jaw, in fact, or there's a problem with the posture with the spike or something like that, or they don't own a spike holder, or those kind of things. So sometimes it's just literally a practical problem. So a lot of what we do in the book about going up and down, we do lots of those kind of things in the book as well. They usually solve it, but I think to not worry about the speed and just make sure that they're enjoying it as they go along. With the bow hold, that can be trickier. And I know some teachers, if they've got very little ones, they get them to hold the bow a little bit further down because it feels lighter. So that's an option. Sometimes some teachers just let them put the thumb like that, rather than through the middle. I don't tend to do that. because then I think they just have to learn the other way later. But if they're very small, or if they're really struggling, or with their fine motor skills, it might be a suitable option for some students. And you can actually buy some gadgets. They're sort of plastic things they can put their little finger there, or go under their finger, or put cello. You can get things as well that go around their fingers, just to keep their fingers in the right place. Sometimes they can block their wrist by doing that, but there are some things in the market. So if you have a little Google, sometimes that can help with that particular thing. But they're the two main problems. Paula, you got some thoughts, obviously, about speed of learning and the importance of that, or not?
Well, yes. I mean, in general terms, the fact that I suppose we all have to remember is that everyone processes at a different speed. Brain processing speed varies for every single person. I mean, within a sort of levels that are not that different, but they do process differently. And as a good teacher, if we know that, it's just good to know that, because you're aware that they all work at a different speed, and you begin, once you kind of know that bit of information, to work out the particular speed of a pupil, how quickly they learn a new concept, how much reinforcement they need. And so you get good at how quickly to go on to the next thing. And if you're always going on to the next thing at the right sort of pace for that pupil, then they never get bored, and the appropriate times to reinforce, which is important. And we do that a lot, particularly in string playing, I think. But the more that you understand about a pupil, the way they learn, which we can do, it's not a difficult thing, the better we are equipped to allow that pupil to do their best, not to get bored, always to be moving forward.
Yeah.
And I think if you're coming these ideas that you've been talking about, where someone may, I don't know, either get it wrong after we've introduced it quite a long time ago, don't feel bad about reintroducing something. But if you can do so in a slightly different way, that's ideal. And however small that different way is, because immediately you kind of a different bit of the brain gets woken up, or a little bit of the different bit of the imagination gets woken up. So, I now see that even better, because I'm seeing it from a slightly different angle.
Yeah.
So don't worry about reinforcing as many times as you need to. Basic things like pulse, you need to keep on reinforcing. Go back to basic games and activities. And eventually pupils understand, and once they get it, they know that they know. I understand that now. It's there forever.
Yeah, I had just that experience a couple of weeks ago with a student who it was about rhythm, and she was playing something, and it just wasn't quite solid. It was all sort of approximate. The quavers and the crotchets were very approximate, and I said, let's go through it clapping again. This time we're going to count in quavers. And then at the end of that, she said, you mean there's 2 quavers in every crotchet, like not just the ones in the... I thought, oh, okay, yeah, that's it. And it was like a proper light bulb moment. And I thought, somehow I obviously haven't explained that enough, or frequently enough, or I haven't checked it's been understood. But she really got it in that moment, and I thought, oh, I thought I'd done that, but okay, I have to do that much more, just much more. But it was a lovely moment that she did get it.
There is a point where everyone will get it. We just have to find that point.
Yeah.
And it's different. It's different for everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so we've got another question, which is from Chloe. So this is, would love to talk about bow hold in small cellists, and especially fixing bow hold when taking on a student who's previously been taught poorly. So I suppose that might be more a question for Jess, but then also maybe for Paul, that question of, how to fix things when you're taking on a student who's been taught by someone else before, perhaps.
Yeah. It's often one of the trickiest things, isn't it? Because first of all, you have to build their trust. They have to build their trust in you, that you really do know what you're doing, and you're doing it in a very kindly way, because it's incredibly difficult to change things. So I suppose to mention it at the beginning, to say we will be just making sure that we're very flexible, or whatever it is that you're needing to change, and explaining why. Because if we just say you need to do this, and they just think, that's not enough of a reason really. But if you explain that it means because when you get to grade 4, this is the piece you'll be able to play with spiccato or whatever, then that's a much easier way round it. Or then this afternoon I can teach you this, or in 5 minutes I can teach you that. So it's a direct relation to why you're asking them to change something. Sometimes when it's a bow hold, I sort of talk to the parents about it and say, but we're going to leave that for a term or half a term. Or I might give them some other exercises. If it's stiffness in the wrist, for example, I might give them lots of, other exercises to do, so that we're building up to it being on the bow, but not quite there yet, because they will find a bow hold change quite difficult. If it's a left-hand change and it's affecting tuning, or there's a lot of stiffness there, I will try and sort that out first, because obviously that's the thing that their parents and they and the audience will hear first. And I remember years ago going to hear Yuri Bashmet's Moscow soloists, and they all came out and they stood three at a stand, the violins and violas, 3 at a stand, and their luggage had been lost, so they were all in jeans and on the Barbican stage. I thought, yeah, I paid a lot of money for this ticket. They didn't quite look what I was hoping. And then they started, and it was breathtakingly brilliant. I mean, just such extraordinary playing. But some of them were playing a little bit like that. Some of them were playing a bit like that. And I just thought, gosh, if that was my student, I'd have something to say about that. But maybe I need to let some things go. Maybe I just need to look, because look at them, look what they could do, So that was a real eye opener for me as well. But I think choosing the battles gently, but building trust right from the beginning, because it's hard for students to change teachers, no matter what the reason. It's hard, Paul, do you have some thoughts about that too?
Well, just 2 little extra things, but very much based on what you've just said. Obviously, never criticize the past teacher, because that people might have loved that teacher, even though they might have been teaching them appallingly badly. They may still have got on very well. So you never criticize. But what you say is that, like presumably from getting from school to your house or from your house to school, there's probably more than one route. You can probably do it in 2 ways, or maybe even more than 2 ways. And so we're going to explore some other routes in order to do this thing. And let's compare. Let's compare which one we think is maybe the most economical or the most enjoyable or the easiest to do. So we explore other ways, and for most things, there are certainly different ways to explain something, not necessarily to do it, but to explain it. And that's the way to get around that. We're going to take a different route, and we'll get to the same place, but maybe we might get there a bit quicker, or it might be a bit easier for you.
Good tactic. Love it.
Great, thank you. And then another question here from Beatrice, who says, I'm not a string player, but I have composed for an amateur string group at my local music centre, and asks, do you have any tips on writing music that is playable for beginner string players? So, yeah.
Well, I suppose beginner string players, open strings, obviously lots and lots of open strings. And then obviously first finger is the next thing. The D and the A are common between all the instruments. G, D, and A are common between all the string instruments. So you could write a lot on those 3 strings, sorry. Doing lots of fast bows and open strings they can do, but they can't change fingers quickly. So you can do that kind of thing. But
the sound cuts out when you play. Yes, yeah. So
sorry. Thank you for telling me. So just to explain, then it's just lots of repeated in the middle of the bow. You can do fast notes there, but they can't change the fingers quickly at the same time. So if you want some fast notes, just make them repeated open strings probably, or one finger. What else? I mean, the basic rhythms that fit together really solidly. That's always really helpful as well. Paul, do you have any ideas? You compose a lot.
I do. I don't have anything to add. Just to reinforce what you just said, keep it rhythmically very straightforward. I mean, really straightforward for beginners, because rhythm is the thing. I mean, they learn notes, but rhythm is something that takes a while. And if they're going to get together to maybe sight read or play things quite quickly together, don't put any rhythm in it except for the most basic.
I suppose you can put the interesting parts on the piano, or I remember when I was in my first youth orchestra, the Cork Youth Orchestra, they got us, the back desk of the second violins, who were obviously not as advanced as the next desk. They got us playing percussion instruments on most of the course rather than allowing us near our violins, you know, so we didn't do any damage in the ensemble. So, but it really developed a very strong sense of rhythm. So, you know, adding some percussion, some piano, all those things are really fun and hide a multitude of sins later on.
Good.
Right. Claire, how are we doing?
Yeah, I think unless anyone's got any more questions, we probably time to wrap up the session. So thanks everyone again for joining us today, and thanks so much, Paul and Jess, for your time and for this introduction to the basic series, which has been really interesting. And yeah, I hope people have found it helpful. So yeah, just a reminder that this has been recorded. I know some people couldn't attend live because they're teaching. It's always difficult to find a good time. So we'll be sending out the recording afterwards, and I'll send some of those resources out in that email as well. So we've got the links for the books, the discount code. We've got a link for Paul's simultaneous learning map, various other things, so I can send those out. And yeah, if you'd like to come to future webinars, just make sure you join our Facebook group, and yeah, you'll be subscribed to our newsletter, so you'll hear from us about any future events. But other than that, yeah, thanks again for being here, and hope to see you again. Thanks.